Hello everyone! Let's put together the head for the puppy pattern. There's two methods you can go with, so I'll put timestamps for all the steps in the description. First we'll work on the machine sewn version. To prep the muzzle, it has 3 darts, and for the machine sewn version we'll just do these 2 up here. I'll use a darker thread so you can see. This dart is a bit fiddly because this line here is more curved than the other. It's easier to see here on paper, and this is so that this side will follow that curve around to create a muzzle shape. So I'm just going to hand sew these darts because they're small and I find it quicker and more control with that straight to curve seam. Here are the finished darts, and you can see it's starting to take its nosy shape. This is included in the pattern. It's an optional marker for safety nose placement to keep it nice and even. This version has a big cutout here, which is where the muzzle will be inserted. For now, we just want to pin and sew this top half. We're leaving the bottom open, just like with the muzzle's bottom dart, because it'll make sewing that cutout easier. So we're just going to sew the forehead. It should look like this. And we're going to open and flatten it out. To help us line everything up, we've got the endpoints here, then one marker, another marker, and the centre seam. And we have the same on the muzzle, the endpoint, this lower cheek marker, this dart up here matches with this point, and then a centre marking to match the seam. I'm going to start at the centre. If you've seen any of my videos before, you'll know I always do this. Then I'm going to go to the furthest end and pin that next. Because this is so curvy, I'm going to use my tiny doll making pins, as they'll take up less space. Over here on the centre, underneath with my finger, I'm feeling for that centre seam and aligning it with the centre line on the muzzle. Then I can pin that and know that it's centred and even. I'm also going to clip these seams very carefully on the markers. It just helps us open out the curve a bit more. I'll then move on to pinning the other markers so they're lined up. Then I do actually like to baste this. It saves me a lot of time in the long run trying to keep these slippery opposing curves under control. So I just did it in small sections to show, from the centre seam to this dart, it's all nice and stitched down. And I'll just move on over to the other markers and continue basting. I'm doing that thing again where I start from one end and then pause and change direction from the other end so that I'm meeting myself in the middle. Maybe it's not your style, but it's mine. You can take it if you like. This final bit in the middle is left, and you can see here if I wrap this around my thumb, both sides even out together. This whole thing is called easing, which is when 2 seams are different from being curved or purposely one is shorter than the other, and we're just gently manipulating and stretching them to fit. So because I'm doing this by hand, I can make the easing go way more precisely and easy. It can be a bit harder when your machine bed is flat and the needle's going so fast. Here's the first half. The muzzle seam is already pulling itself into a rounded shape thanks to the easing. So we'll just finish off this other half and move on. I do go over it with the machine. This is a seam to take nice and slow. Pause lots with the needle down, foot up, and keep checking both sides of the seam for bunching or the rest of the face trying to get in the way. And that is the difficult bit done. The muzzle has been eased into the rest of the face, looks really good, nice and neat thanks to the basting. So now we just need to close up the chin. Imagine trying to sew the muzzle with that chin closed up already. Nightmare. But now we can fold over the face and sew this dart. Starting in the middle to line those seams up, I push a pin through the seam on one side and match on the other. Together they become one big dart, and we're just going to treat it like one. Starting from the centre means those seams lined up nice. The front half is nearly done, it just needs those 2 darts folding over and sewing, just like the one we just did. So the front half is now done, and it was easily the hardest part of the whole head, but it's out of the way! So next we work on the back. I've got my little arrows to show me which sides of the back seams. It's very easy, just pin from top to bottom and sew them together. 2 more darts to go, and then we're ready to put the front of the head with the back and finish up. We've got our 2 halves, so let's put them together. I've got 2 more markers on the side seams just for fun, but if you're adding any details like stripes or fur fluff, they can help you map things out. Starting from the centre as usual, then working around, lining everything up in one big circle. We can now turn and stuff this baby. This is a bit of a trust the process kind of pattern. It looks a bit goofy because I haven't clipped the side seams yet, and it's going to need some thread sculpting to bring the eyes in, but first it needs a nose, so this will get clipped and restuffed later, and you'll see it again in the thread sculpting video. This is where things might get a bit fuzzy for me. There were major storms and flooding where I lived a couple of months ago. And ever since then my power has not been great, so I've been having to work around outages and power tripping, and it's meant I couldn't film things in the order I would have liked. This will make sense, but it just isn't in the order I originally planned it in. For example, I would have liked to have done the machine sewn face and the hand sewn one at the same time, so I could compare the pieces side by side. But I'll just have to use this test piece instead. I also embroidered these far too close together to cut, and redoing it would have been a waste of fabric, so we'll have to pretend these are also 2 separate pieces, okay? Okay. So the cutout is still kind of there, marked into the pattern, but instead of cutting it out, we're leaving it in. This shape here for the face might seem odd, why didn't I just go straight down, seeing as it will be covered by the muzzle later? But we do have this little dip into a nose bridge here, so this curve creates a more natural shape underneath the muzzle to build upon. I also accidentally programmed my marker lines as a double backstitch, and honestly I am not putting myself through unpicking that. It's all time I could spend working on this pattern, so just pretend I diligently drew this on with fabric pens. The back of the head is exactly the same for both versions, just sew the back seam and the darts, and it's ready to go. The muzzle is also almost the same, in that we sew 2 darts up top, but this time we do the bottom one as well. Because we're hand sewing it on, it needs to be finished, and that also means inserting the safety nose. This is a bit more simple than the machine sewn pattern. We'll just put these pieces together, then pin and sew all around this side from top to bottom. It's kind of similar to some other face patterns, it's kind of cute. And next we'll just sew those darts, add the back, and then add that muzzle. So if you're not like me and you haven't accidentally sewn these in like a ninny, you can take the pattern pieces and draw the muzzle lines out with an erasable marker. Now take the muzzle and add just a bit of stuffing, not loads because it's just going to fall out, but enough to keep the basic shape. Then I'm going to pop a pin into that top centre mark on the muzzle and pin it to the centre seam on the head. Then repeat that with the bottom centre seams just to start it off. Like when pinning and basting the machine sewn version, start with the markers on those curve lines to get a nice even foundation to work on. Now that there's some pins in there, I'm going to add a bit more stuffing. Then fill in the gaps with more pins! Don't be afraid to take pins out and redo them if you think something looks wonky. To help with the stuffing, I'm going to take this longer needle, and I'm just using it to sort of distribute stuffing out towards the edges and make sure I'm not missing any spots. Bit more stuffing. Once we're happy with the pinning, we just have to ladder stitch it to the head. We'll start down here at the chin seams. I'll anchor my thread here where it's more inconspicuous, and get sewing. I normally go around twice for strength, and then I can tie off and hide the threads, and done! Here's both heads done. There's some slight differences in the finished look, depending on which version you went for, but I recommend thread sculpting them anyway, so they will end up the same. There's no right or wrong version here. I included both versions so that you could do whichever method is more comfortable for you. Next up is the thread sculpting, and you'll see these babies again in that video. The puppy pattern is available now in my coffee shop. Thanks so much for watching, and goodbye!